Jake Rambo has been a Mount Pleasant Town Council member for almost 4 years. He tells me if he'll seek another term for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Mount Pleasant Town Councilman Jake Rambo, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Appreciate it, brother.
Oh, you're very welcome. I know that obviously there's a lot going on in this town of Mount Pleasant. So let me ask you bluntly, what is the state of the town of Mount Pleasant right now?
The town of Mount Pleasant is doing really, really well. Council it has enacted a number of changes. The growth rate in Mount Pleasant has slowed significantly, which was a number of our goals, was to slow down that growth, let the infrastructure catch up, maintain our quality of life. The recreation program is doing great. We have a lot of upcoming projects that our families and kids in Mount Pleasant will really benefit from. And then we also, with the part of our new budget cycle, are really going to be giving big raises to our first responders, which I'm excited about.
And how much will those raises be for those first responders?
So I can't get into, I don't remember the exact specifics, but basically for fire and police, pay rates from 2019 to what is proposed in this new budget will have gone up approximately 40 to 50% in most of those categories, with the majority of those bumps going to happen starting July 1st after our new budget is approved and enacted.
Now, how do you compare those particular pay raises to the other surrounding areas?
Yeah, so this particular, after the new budget is enacted July 1st, we will be just shy of the city of Charleston, but we will be ahead of the city of North Charleston, Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island, and all of the rest of the municipalities. And I know personally, I have the goal of then at the next fiscal year, next July 1st, is to see even more raises and get it on par with the city of Charleston.
And where those other raises will happen within the town?
Say that again, Colton.
Oh, yes, sir. And you talk about those other raises. What areas are you looking at right now?
Oh, I was still discussing first responders, but our overall town staff. I mean, part of that is keeping up with inflation, as well as knowing that our first responders are a priority. The cost of living in Mount Pleasant is really high. We want them to be able to live where they work, and we want to take care of them, the people that take care of us.
So, what is the inflation rate right now in the town of Mount Pleasant?
I don't know about the town of Mount Pleasant specifically. I mean, I think nationwide it's 5 or 6% now. Obviously, last year it was even higher than that. But in the town specifically, particularly housing, since COVID, the housing prices have gone up significantly, and it's pricing a lot of our folks out, and we want them to be able to live where they work.
Wow. So how many of those people have been actually priced out due to these high prices?
I don't have any specific numbers on that, but I can look at a salary list and look at the real estate prices, and they don't match.
Wow. So then, how does the town actually, obviously meet those town salaries and actually have it to meet up with inflation?
Yeah, so there's an inflationary aspect to our property tax that we collect as well. There's a reassessment every 5 years, and state law requires us to lower it back. But in the meantime, what happens is, particularly every time a new home is sold, so if a home was previously owned by the same owner for 20 years and it was taxed at a rate of $300,000, and all of a sudden that home sells for $1.2 million, then the tax revenue is now based on $1.2 million as opposed to $300,000, and so that little bit here and there is what our goal is to use for catching up our first responders, like we said.
So, what is the tax revenue for that right now?
For that specifically,
Yes,
I
sir.
don't know. I mean, the town overall has about $100 million budget when it's uh, all in. But then obviously it's split out amongst all the different departments.
And what departments will get the most?
Well, the largest funded departments are our public our first responders are our police, fire, public services, recreation is a large department as well. But recreation also brings in
Yes.
a number of revenue as well. So on the net side, our public services and first responders are our largest.
And you talk about earlier, Jake, about obviously, Councilman, about the growth rate slowing a little bit. So, how do you compare that, say, from 5 years ago when you got on council, or 4 years ago when you got on council?
Yeah, so I've been on council 3.5 years now, and the growth rate has continued to decline. But really, if you compare it to 10 years ago, I mean, we were in 10% plus territory, and now we're down to 1.5, 2% growth rate. And a lot of that is actually stuff that was already approved
Right. Oh,
years
yes.
ago.
Yes.
Developers had the right to build. There's still permits left on the planned development in Carolina Park.
Yes.
Council doesn't have any influence. Once a planned development is approved, they have the right to do that. Carolina Park is one of them. So there's more homes that are coming there, but they're starting to run out, and so the growth rate will continue to decline, and that's what we were elected to do, or I know I was.
Yes, sir. So let me ask you this, Dan. How many homes are currently in Carolina Park, which I love? I work out there a lot and, go out there a lot. So how many homes are there right now?
I could get you those numbers, but I definitely don't know them off the top of my head. But I mean, I think overall there's a couple thousand.
Wow. Well, Dan, let me ask you this, Councilman. So, okay, what's more important for the town of Mount Pleasant right now? Is it building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing existing homes?
You nailed it with the second one. Rehabbing and better utilizing, particularly our commercial areas. I would love to not see much more of our wetlands, or any of our wetlands, or our trees destroyed. And then there's a number of commercial properties in town that are in need of a facelift and a rehab. And so, we're hoping that and that sort of thing is starting to happen too.
So where exactly in the town are you talking about as far as facelifting for some of these commercial spaces?
There's not like a specific area that's like, oh, this is an area that really needs an uplift. It's really more piecemealed almost. You'll have a newer type office building next to a small little old industrial building, and so it's just kind of making things flow better. And commercial development and economic development is important for the tax base as well. It's a way to bring more money into the tax base, more jobs, without necessarily growing the population and increasing the traffic.
Yes, sir. So what is the current tax base right now for the town of Mount Pleasant?
Well, overall, our revenue is about 100 million. About 2/3 of that comes from property tax, and about a little bit more than a third, actually comes from business licenses that the businesses pay, as well as some income from fees for services, like when you sign your kid up for sports or camps or that sorts of thing. Those sorts of things.
Oh yeah, that's going to be exciting to see that this upcoming summer with all the summer camps. So okay. Let me ask you this, Dan. Well, how many jobs are being brought into town right now?
I do not know the answer to that, actually. Okay. I know region-wide there's a significant number, but for the town of Mount Pleasant, it's an interesting transition because our economy has kind of shifted from more of a producing economy to more of a service base. There's a lot of financial sector stuff in here, and our population, the education level of our population has changed, and so a lot of that for Mount Pleasant is not necessarily new jobs, but jobs that shift more towards the population that lives here.
Wow. So what is that educational level with the population?
Again, I don't know the exact number, but it is one of the highest in the region, if not the highest in the region for the East Cooper area.
And say, I know Mount Pleasant is growing a lot, and I don't need you. I don't need to tell you that. But where do you see that level heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, we're at about 92,000 residents right now. Based on approvals and just knowing what's out there, I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, we would be at 95,000. Maybe I think the council, through the recent comprehensive plan, kind of toned down some of the future land use and development. Whereas I think they were previously predicting overall build out of Mount Pleasant would be like 130,000 people, and now we're looking at less than 100,000. If the comprehensive plan is stuck to by future councils.
Okay, well then let me ask you this, Councilman. So how should the town actually plan to slow upward expansion of the town limits and actually focus on making necessary changes within the town limits?
Yeah, so the focus for protecting outside of the town limits or undeveloped areas is what's happened in the past is somebody has a 2-acre piece of land, and by right they're allowed to put, say, 2 houses on that 2 acres. And what has happened in the past, unfortunately, is they've come before council and said, hey, I'd like to come into the town, and in exchange, can you give us the rights to build 15 houses on these 2 acres? And so all of a sudden, your population density dramatically increases, straining the services, and then also displacing more wildlife and things like that. So I think the biggest thing is to stick to the zoning code that we have. People have the right to build stuff within the zoning code, but what's bit us in the past is people keep getting rights to build even more than what they knew they were allowed to.
So what are the prime examples of that right now?
Shoot, look around. I mean, a lot of the developments. I mean, Carolina Park is one that had a big plan development agreement that was approved by council, and it was a fight for years. And I mean, it was way before I was on council, so I don't know all the specifics. But I mean, they essentially were allowed to end up building a lot more than they would have been allowed per the zoning code at that time.
So if you look at Carolina Park right now, because of the population density, what are the things that are actually straining the town right now in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think it's the population density, which is what creates the traffic, and is what creates the strain on our police and fire services. Building new fire service stations, and that sort of thing, well as like public recreation. You have a big neighborhood come in, which has lots of kids, and there's nothing against anyone who lives in Carolina Park. My friends are my kids have friends that live there, and we there's great people in there, and they bought homes in there, but then their kids join sports, and they're we don't have enough field space, and we can't it just gets hard to meet the needs of everybody.
So I know you don't speak for the people there, but tell me, what are the needs that they need right now in Carolina Park?
It's not necessarily the needs of Carolina Park. It's more Mount Pleasant as a whole. I mean, Carolina Park, newer neighborhoods like Carolina Park have an HOA, and so they can kind of meet their own needs through those kinds of things. But it's more the strain on the overall infrastructure. And I don't want to. I'm not picking on Carolina Park. It's just an example of a large development that's come online in the past 10 years and continues to develop that just strains the infrastructure.
Wow. And what else, when you look around the town, that you see is really straining the infrastructure that you want council to really tackle?
No, I mean, that's it. I mean, it was the growth rate, and it was the rate of new development, and infrastructure couldn't keep up. And infrastructure means roads. It means schools. Even though we don't control the schools, that's controlled by the school district, but our schools are busting at the seams. And the planning on the school district's part was not there. But that's partially, I think, on the town too, to coordinate that. And then also, like I said, our recreation facilities. We haven't had we haven't had a new field built in 12 years in this town. There's a lot that are going to come online. Carolina Park is going to be finished, which will have a couple of new soccer fields, two new softball fields, which, by the way, are going to be the first girls softball fields, regulation girls softball fields in Mount Pleasant. So I'm excited about that for our young softball ladies. And then do baseball field, dog park, playground, some other things. So that's going to be coming online. Part of that's going to be done this coming fall, and then into the following summer, that will hopefully be 100% complete. And then the planning is underway for Rifle Range Roads Park. And so that's exciting. And I'm looking forward to digging in, working more on that, because while we're building some fields and a double gym facility and some classroom facility for camps and stuff, we also are very cognizant of the land there and preserving as much green space and as much wetlands, and so really fitting that in really nicely.
And I know you talked earlier about obviously, the educational strengths right now, and within the Charleston County School District, and you feel that the town of Mount Pleasant that is didn't do much about that. So what should the town do now to help with that?
Well, I think, no, that was not me saying that the town didn't. I think in general, maybe there wasn't enough coordination where the school district said, hey, when they're rezoning a school, it's like they just look at current populations and play with those numbers without taking into account enough where's the future growth lie. And so what happens is they're having to rezone these schools every 2 or 3 years, instead of just doing it much less often. Because rezoning those schools is disruptive to families.
And so where do you see the future growth rate right now as far as schools in Mount Pleasant?
It's still the pressure on the northern end. It's still the pressure on the northern end of town. Carolina Park Elementary School is under a lot of pressure. And so it's really those schools, as well as Beckham High School is over capacity. It was just not built big enough, unfortunately.
And I've had conversations with many of the school board candidates and school board members about that as well, as you know. But let me ask you, as a former educator...
Sorry, Quintin, you broke up right there. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I saw you breaking up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. And, I talked to many of this Charleston County School Board candidates and members about that, as you know. But let me ask you, as a former educator, do you still feel a responsibility to help children in your current role as town councilman?
I think I caught part of that question, but yes, the main way that we support the schools is through a couple of different ways. One, the town funds an SRO, a school resource officer at every elementary school, which is not funded by the district. And so we make that a priority to keep our kids safe, and for the kids to have a positive police presence in their school and build positive relationships with police officers. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I feel that is a big support is our parks and recreation programs. It's like my mom always said, idle hands are the devil's work. And so if we, outside of school hours, have great programs, recreation, arts programs for these kids, that gives them an avenue and a passion, then hopefully they stay out of trouble.
Yes, sir. And I know earlier, Mr. Rambo, you talked about obviously being on council 3.5 years. So let me ask you, as we sit here right now, are you thinking or seeking re-election?
I haven't officially decided. I enjoy this immensely. I enjoy this work immensely. And so I'm certainly leaning towards doing it. My life is kind of busy right now. We just had our 4th child, who was born a few weeks early. So spent a few weeks in the NICU. Shout out to East Cooper Hospital NICU. The nurses and doctors there are incredible, and just a different experience. But she's home now. She's doing great, but I'm sleepy. but but no, I mean, most likely I am, but I that decision has not been made 100% yet.
No worries.
Yeah, but I do really enjoy it.
Yeah, oh, I bet you do. And going back to 4 years ago when you ran for obviously town council, how many campaign contributions did you receive from construction or development entities when you ran for council?
Um, I honestly can't remember any. Um, I had most of my campaign contributions were actually family businesses, from various family members, as well as some individual donations. Gosh, I don't believe there were any outside of maybe one of the family, my mother's company, maybe. But I honestly can't remember.
Oh, no worries. And do you know the total amount of all of those donations?
I want to say, gosh, I want to say I raised 6 or 7 thousand, but I matched that, probably spending my own money. And if I do run again, I don't even plan to fundraise this time.
Okay.
I'll just, yeah, I don't plan to do as much, this time in that regard, but yeah.
Okay. And since your time on council, in what way, Councilman, have you advocated for developers during your time on council?
Say that again?
Yeah.
Oh, you broke up again. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. And in the 3 years that you've been on council, 3.5 years that is, how have you advocated for developers on council?
Um, I don't think I have. I don't think they would be my biggest fans because, like I said, it's not being anti-development. It's being pro. Like, this is our comprehensive plan. We're going to stick to our comprehensive plan. When you bought this piece of property, it was zoned in this particular way, and that is, don't expect to come to council and think that you're going to get it rezoned to where you can build more than what was previously what it's currently zoned for. And so it's not necessarily being anti-development or pro-development. It's just being let's stick to the vision that we have for the town of Mount Pleasant. And I'm proud of the work that I've done and my fellow council members have done, for the most part, to work towards that vision.
But when you advocated for the hotel in Oakland and changes to the building heights, was it that a developer agenda item?
Yes, sort of. So we what it used to be was hotel. There were hotel zones. Or excuse me. It used to be you could build a hotel in any business zoning in Mount Pleasant. So if you had it, no matter where it was. And so we kind of learned a lesson from the city of Charleston, and the proliferation of hotels that's happening downtown, and they're everywhere. And so what we did was we looked at it and we said, okay, it seems to be like the hotels are clustered like at the entrances. So there's the entrance from downtown, and then there's they're kind of clustered where the 526 entrance is into Mount Pleasant. But the one thing we did look at, and I looked at, is I said, okay, well, and I know I've had conversations with Shipyard Park, who has big baseball tournaments every weekend, and people come from all over the place. There's not a hotel anywhere near there. As well as if you live in the northern end of Mount Pleasant and you have family coming into town, you don't have room for them. They've got to stay, all the way on the southern end of town. And so yes, I did say, hey, this is the biggest commercial area in there. So if there is going to be a hotel in the northern end of town, this is probably the best place for it. So really what it did was it restricted them from being built everywhere else in town except for those 3 zones.
Do you feel like a hotel in Oakland would be ideal now?
I don't know the specifics of it enough to guess. I mean, I know developers are having a hard time with land cost and construction costs right now. I know hotel folks are having a hard time from an operations perspective getting folks to work in those hotels. So I don't know the economics of it. I know that it could potentially actually help traffic. Like I said, the Shipyard Park complex, people are driving. Most people are staying all the way on this end of town. When they're at those tournaments, and so actually you could probably reduce traffic a little bit with one, but I have no idea if there are plans for one or not. I haven't seen anything come across Planning Commission or Design Review Board or anything like that.
And I hate to be redundant, but in your opinion, should a hotel go there?
Hey, Quintin, you broke up again, man. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think the connection is not very good.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on my patio here, but let me ask you: in your opinion, is it a hotel in that area, North Mount Pleasant? Is it really ideal?
I don't know about ideal, but from a service perspective, I think that it would not be bad to have a hotel in that area of town. And like I said, it's not that shopping center. The Oakland Shopping Center is the biggest commercial area in on the northern end of town, and it doesn't have residential that's like right there. So it's if there was going to be a place where one was built, that would certainly be the spot.
Okay, and can you for the viewers explain the council form of government and how it actually works?
Yeah, so we have what's called a strong council, weak mayor form of government. So obviously we have the mayor. Mayor Haney is obviously our current mayor in his second term as mayor. So he is the mayor, and so he acts as he runs the council meetings, but then B, I mean, as the mayor, he is kind of the front person, so to speak. As far as promoting town events, representing the town on various boards and commissions and things like that. But at the end of the day, all 8 council members plus the mayor, all 9 of us have equal votes on all topics. Whereas, like the city of Charleston, the city of North Charleston, the mayor is also the full-time person that runs the town. But it's not here. We have our town administrator, Mr. Demora, who does a really good job.
Yes.
So he runs the day-to-day aspects of that. And so it's a little different just a little different structure.
Cool. And now, do you think the mayor's role aligns with what it is supposed to be under the strong council system?
That is a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, legally, yes. I mean, legally, certainly. I mean, he runs the meetings as the parliamentarian, essentially. But everyone has an equal vote, and everyone has equal access to information or department heads or whatever. And actually, a lot of the work gets done in committee. So those committee chairs have a lot of that responsibility as well.
And what role do you see for council in policing the conduct of public officials?
I think public officials are held accountable by the voters. So if somebody's conduct is out of line and they are treating constituents poorly or what have you, that's an issue that the voters can take up. I think legally there's avenues where if an elected official commits like a crime or something like that, there's avenues where the governor, I think, can remove them because our council as a whole doesn't have the power to remove a public official. It would just be the governor, or it would be next time they're up for re-election, you have the right to vote them out, campaign against them, whatever you see. I mean, that's the beauty of elections and democracy, right?
And moving over to re-election, going back to what I was talking to you earlier about
Yes.
re-election, actually, what's that one big issue that will allow you to run for one more term?
I think we've done a lot of work to slow growth and allow our infrastructure to catch up. We've got some big road projects getting ready to start, some recreation projects getting ready to start, and I'd like to just see the work through. If I do decide to run, that would be the main reason. Is I want to, the work is there, and we've got a good start on it. But I would want to see it through and see it finished.
And how many road projects are in the works right now for 2023?
There's some big ones. So you have Patriots Point Boulevard intersection. So that is part of that has broken ground, and that is a much needed. You've got the Highway 17 to Rifle Range Road, the new connector road that will run past the new park, as well as the extension of Billy Swales Parkway, which will be another key piece that's just providing another path from south to north to kind of spread out cars and give people different routes, so to speak. So those are the three big ones. There's some other little ones. All American Boulevard is a smaller one that will just make some connections that keep people off the main roads, basically. But those are really the three big ones, and they'll be impactful.
And how about my favorite place, Coleman Boulevard?
Gosh, Quintin, I'm sorry to do this again. You broke up again. I could not hear you.
Oh, no worries. And how about my favorite boulevard of all places, Mount Pleasant, Coleman?
Coleman Boulevard is, ever since it got redone, it has been doing well. Probably the biggest complaint I get, and I relate to it personally because my kid rides his bike to the school over there, down Coleman Boulevard, is the speeding. And I know our police officers have been focusing on it lately. So I wish the speeding would come down a little bit, but I think everybody could complain about that everywhere probably. But yeah. Yeah, and then we're coming up on beach season, so yes. I know our police works hard with coordinating with Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island for managing some of that beach traffic, of people coming through Mount Pleasant to get to one of those islands.
You know what? Speaking of which, let me talk to you about that. Obviously, the Isle of Palms obviously is working right now with the residents and the DOT to come up with a plan for refiguring, for lack of a better word, the Isle of Palms connector. What will the town of Mount Pleasant do on their side to make that happen?
Well, really, that's a DOT decision, and so I know our transportation committee has been updated on that, but that's a SCDOT controlled thing that we really don't have a lot to say in. Other than, I think me personally, and a couple of other council members really got heavily involved with the Isle of Palms. After they tried to prevent our residents from essentially parking out there after COVID, but luckily the Charleston Beach Foundation worked with our local representatives, and they were able to get that bill passed, S40, that limits their ability to do that. But I think coming out of that, just Mount Pleasant working collaboratively with those beach communities to help alleviate that traffic.
Any more traffic?
Or help keep traffic moving. You can't really alleviate it, but
right. Any traffic lights that you want to add or could add?
No, because I think we've talked about all of the major projects and that sort of thing.
Okay, no worries. Well, Mount Pleasant Town Councilman Jake Rambo, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Appreciate you, brother.
Always. Yes, sir.